It was 2002, and I was in a museum in Moscow. And the exhibition was just called Women at War. Beautifully done exhibition, and I, as the historian, I tend to focus as much on the caption as I do on the photograph in front of me. And I noticed that the names of the photographers sounded Jewish to my ears. And I know that's a sort of crass way to be thinking about photography. In other words, it's not just a piece of art, it's also a sort of an artifact of history. So I went up to the curator and I asked her in a very gentle, roundabout way, why are all of the photographers you've chosen to exhibit Jewish in this exhibition on women at war? And she looked at me like I was a complete idiot and more or less said, well, I didn't pick Jewish photographers. The photographers were all Jewish. So that's what actually got me started on this project, of asking, why were Jews photographers in the Soviet Union? Two, why was it patently obvious to her that that would be the case and completely foreign to me that that would be the case? And then three, what are they doing with their cameras when they're being asked by the Soviet state to represent their country, being the chief photographers for all the major media, so the equivalent of the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, like Washington Post, all the major Soviet press. These guys are the ones documenting both the building of the Soviet Union in the 30s and then how it gets destroyed in the 40s by the Germans. From my vantage point, the Holocaust becomes more meaningful if it's embedded as a historical process and not sort of ripped out of history. And this is actually a big debate in Holocaust studies about whether the Holocaust is so unique that it's not comparable to anything else, or whether doing that then ruins its sort of pedagogic potential. In other words, if the Holocaust is unique and it's what they did, third person, and it's 60 years ago or 70 years ago, then from my vantage point, it becomes a useless teaching tool. So in fact, when I started my first job after my PhD, they asked me to teach a course on the Holocaust. This is kind of what all Jewish studies professors are asked to do if there isn't one already on campus. And I said, you know what, I would rather teach a course on the history of 20th century genocide, with the focus on the Holocaust as the event in history that created the language, legal, political, ethical language around genocide, but continuing all the way up to the present. So for example, today, April 7th, is the Memorial Day for the Rwandan genocide, which is now 18 years old. Not a single speaker here has yet mentioned that. I'm going to be mentioning that. But that's to me the way that the Holocaust should be used to create a sort of ethical self today. The understanding that we have in the United States of the Holocaust, propagated by our schools and by all of our major museums, is one particular way of understanding the Holocaust, but it's not the only way. And if you look at the Holocaust through Soviet photography, you see visually a very different sense of what the Holocaust is. It is not concentration camps. Those are not the primary way the Holocaust is visualized in the Soviet Union, because there were no camps in the Soviet Union. And this is I guess the depressing reality is that in the Soviet Union, the Holocaust is mostly about empty landscapes. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. And how do you make memorial sites out of empty landscapes if there aren't great ruins, if there aren't a lot of survivors? If those are not the people or the relics telling stories, then who gets to tell the stories of the Holocaust?